Hello and welcome to a new video in the series to introduce you to World of Warships. Some of the basics are shortly touched upon in this series, and today we're going to talk about these things over here. Torpedoes. Every single destroyer has them. You can see them here on my Kagero Tier 8 Japanese destroyer. A lot of cruisers have torpedoes, like the Atago here. It's got two launchers on each side. But even some battleships have torpedoes. As you can see over here. And you can also see it here, of course. You need to take into account that every single ship that uses torpedoes might use them in a different way. It's not like every single torpedo fires in the same way and is used the same way. For Japanese destroyers like the Kagero, what we looked upon first, for the Kagero it is the main armament. The main armaments are these torpedoes. Guns are secondary armament. For a cruiser in a battleship, of course, the guns are the main armament and torpedoes are used as secondary armament. For American destroyers, for instance, well, if you look at the Kid, that is really clear. The guns are the main armament and torpedoes are secondary. Also because this one only has one launcher with 5 torpedoes in it. But also the Fletcher, it's really clear that these can use both the guns and the torpedoes really well. Russian destroyers, especially the early Russian destroyers, well, the early ones up to tier 7, all have a short range torpedo. 4 kilometers, some have 5 kilometers range, but the tier 7 only has 4 kilometer range as well. So for those ships you could say that torpedoes are a secondary armament and the guns are the main armament. And in the case of the tier 7, let's get it here as well. The tier 7, here it is, Minsk. If you look at these guns, you can really see why that might be true. It's got 2 guns here, another one here, and 2 guns here. It's got 5 130mm guns, which are quick firing and do loads of damage. And the torpedoes still only have a 4 kilometer range. Even with the upgraded torpedoes, it's still only 4 kilometer range. And not sooner than when you upgrade to the tier 8 ships, the Kiev with its 8 kilometer torpedoes, or the Ognovoy even with 10 kilometer torpedoes, you actually get torpedoes that can sail further than your detectability range. It also is a very big difference in how you're going to use those torpedoes. So let's look at some basic things. Let's for instance get my Z23 as an example. You have the 9.5 kilometer range torpedo here. And this is a ship that can use both torpedoes and guns as main armament. You can just pick your play, basically. But they all have a certain range, which is 9.5 kilometers. They have a certain amount of maximum damage. In this case, it's 14,400 hit points of damage. It's got a basic reload time, and with this ship, that's enhanced because of the captain that has a skill that increases the speed at which it's reloaded. And you have to take that into account. Next to that, you can fire every single torpedo launcher, except when it's a single torpedo launcher. You can fire them either in a narrow spread or in a wide spread. You can really see that when I look at some of the gameplay I recorded earlier today with my V25. These are single launchers, so you can't set them up as a wide spread, or because there's nothing to spread. But here you can set those up in a wide spread or a narrow spread. I'll show you that now. Here we are. That's the single launcher, and the launchers on the middle, wide spread, and the one before was the narrow spread. You can see that it's not making any difference in the single launcher at the front. That's a narrow spread again. So next we're going to talk about the torpedo indicator. You can see that white line over there. I've got a target selected, a cruiser. And the white line basically predicts where that ship is going to be, or where I have to fire my torps to hit the target. If, and that is a big if, the target continues to sail in a straight line. As soon as the target changes its direction or changes speed or anything like that, you are going to miss your target. And as you can see, that is what is going to happen here. The cruiser was speeding up, so I missed all my torps. Luckily, there was a previously unspotted destroyer close by, and I am going to hit the destroyer with one torpedo. Just a lucky hit, basically. So I decided to make a very small paint thing, because I can show you some things. Let's say that this is your destroyer or your torpedo firing ship, and this is the enemy ship. Of course, if you fire that way, you know, you're just going to fire where that ship is at the moment. Your torpedoes are going to have to travel following this line, and you are going to miss. Because once your torpedoes reach this area, the enemy ship is going to be over here. So what you are going to need to do is fire around about there, probably. And then this is also the indicator. You can see the indicator. I just showed the indicator in the last clip of World of Warships. The indicator will show you where to fire your torpedoes, but that only shows for a ship traveling in a straight line. It doesn't account for any turns, of course. It doesn't account for increases in speed or decreases in speed. And if this ship now starts to sail that way, let's say it's going to turn, it might still hit your torpedoes while your torpedoes are going that way. You see, because there is still a cross here. But that will only happen if it also slows down. But if the ship is going to sail in that direction, so let's say it's going to turn that way, you are going to miss those torpedoes. So every single time you fire torpedoes, you shouldn't fire all your torpedoes on this same line, because you are going to miss them. Once this ship only has to sail a little faster or a little slower or just a slight turn, and you're going to miss all your torpedoes. That is also why there is a wide spread and a narrow spread. A narrow spread might look like this, slightly. Two torpedoes or two lines, those are narrow. And all your torpedoes, sometimes it's only two, sometimes it's five, but they're all going to be in a quite narrow thing. Now let's say that this ship is going to sail over here. You might actually hit all your torpedoes, or at least if you fired 5 torpedoes, you might actually hit 3 or something like that. Which of course is a great success. But if you fire a wide spread of torpedoes, there's a lesser chance that you're actually going to hit a lot of torpedoes from this single spread on that ship. But then again, since there's a lot more possible areas of contact, if this ship starts speeding up, you are going to get a bigger chance that you're actually going to hit something with that spread than when it's a narrow spread. A lot of people use some narrow spreads and some wide spreads together, and that really basically is up to you, what you like, what you want to do, and every situation calls for a different approach as well, because it might really well be that there's a lot of enemy ships sailing in between some islands and you want to block the entrance. Well, you can use a narrow spread for that and just fire 2 right next to each other, or you can which might look like that, you know, firing 2 narrow spreads together, because if an enemy ship is going to sail in here like that, they are going to get hit by a torpedo. That is going to be funny and nice for you. But you might also fire 1 wide spread now, and then hold for maybe half a minute and fire the other wide spread. They might have dodged the first spread and then still get hit by a torpedo from the second spread. So what you have to do is you always have to account for, what is this ship going to do? What if it isn't going to sail in this line here? What if this ship is going to sail like this? Because it spotted you and it's going to come for you. And it knows, of course, that if it's sailing straight at you, and you might be here, and it might actually think you're going to sail in a straight line, so it's going to go over here and make sure it intercepts you here. The smaller the target, so if it points at you, of course, his target is smaller, there's less for you to aim at, the smaller the chance that he's going to take more than one torpedo hit. So you should take this into account as well. You might want to, well, let's keep it that way. You might want to fire one spread there, because you were aiming at this line, you know, that was the line you were aiming for. But you might also want to fire one spread in that general direction, and maybe a third spread, which is even going to be closer, like that. And then the chances that you're going to hit something, of course, are increasing as well. If you fire all three spreads at this line, you're probably not going to hit something. Though at lower tiers, there's a bigger chance that the ship is actually going to sail straight through. And of course, when the ship gets really close to you, there's no reason to spread that out then. Especially if it's within 1 kilometer or anything like that. You shouldn't actually wait until you're within 1 kilometer to fire torpedoes. But sometimes it just happens, and sometimes you just feel a little cocky, a little funny, and you want to get close and fire from close range. You are allowed to do that, of course, but then you don't have to spread them out a lot anymore. You can just fire your torpedoes straight at them, as this gameplay footage shows as well. So as you can see, I'm sailing in my V25 again. It's one of the ships I like a lot. It's one of those seal clubbers, and just before I sailed into the cap, I saw it was being capped, but I thought, well, I don't really care. I'm one of the better players here. That is not because I'm cocky or anything like that. It's a cooperative battle, so it's bots against me. Come on, I can beat a few bots. So, fired my torps. Thought I spread them out correctly. But then I saw that all my torpedoes were actually going to miss. Luckily, I was able to dodge his as well, and started turning to take care of that as take care of that destroyer first. I really don't want an enemy destroyer behind me, so I thought it would be best just to follow him around. And the funny thing is, with this V25, you've got torpedoes on the front, and as you can see, I really fired it sort of straight at the indicator. Here I fire one straight at the indicator, but I think he's going to turn. Luckily, or really unlucky basically, I really didn't account for how much it was going to turn, and you can see I missed both. And I thought, well, he's going to get really close. I'm not going to be able to reload my side torps at the before he's going to hit me. And only now I spotted that there was an enemy destroyer right next to me. So, sailing backwards, launching torpedoes. Is taken out by a friendly, but greatly helped by me, of course. I really want to take out this enemy destroyer now, but the torpedo tube that is aimed at him wasn't being reloaded on time. I could see it was actually going the other way, so that's why I'm firing one spread right in front of the indicator. And I just hit one torpedo out of my 4. And killed them with my guns. And now there's a third target really close. And there's no way I'm going to be able to reload my side torpedo tubes in time, so this is what I did. And though it cost me my life, I really enjoyed this gameplay. And it also shows why I love this so much. So next to all that, there's several things you should take into account. And this might be a little beyond the basics, but every single torpedo has a different speed, a different range, a different reload time, and every single ship you should play differently. Some ships you can even play in different ways with different styles. For instance, if you look at the Shimakaze at tier 10, it's got 3 different types of torpedoes you can pick from. And it's not that one type of torpedoes is better than the other. It does cost you a pretty big amount of experience to research the other 2. But let's pick these for example. These are 20-kilometer torpedoes which do close to 21,000 damage with a torpedo speed of 62 knots. The higher the speed of the torpedoes, the bigger the chance that you're actually going to hit something, because the enemy won't have time to react anymore. They'll see a torpedo and before they know it, it hits them. This is a torpedo with a bigger amount of damage, a higher speed, but the range decreased by 8 kilometers. So you can't fire these torpedoes at targets more than 12 kilometers away, because that's just not going to work. But these torpedoes are going to be a bit quicker, so it's harder for the enemy to dodge them. Then if you look at the third type of torpedo, the reload time goes actually down, so that's good. You get a quicker reload. The range goes down by 12 kilometers, so you, instead of 20 you have 8 kilometer range, and the speed goes up to 76 knots. Well, it's close to impossible to dodge that. And the funny thing is, with a good captain and some extra modules and good skills, you can get the detectability of this ship down to, let's say, 5.9, somewhere around there. So there's still 2.1 kilometers range in which you can play around without being spotted and firing your torpedoes. So you can still stealth fire these torpedoes, and they're a lot quicker. So it all depends on your playstyle and what you feel comfortable with, what type of your torpedo you're going to mount. And then there's 2 last, but certainly not least, points I have to share about torpedoes. And that is, first of all, don't ever fire torpedoes at targets sailing away from you that are already out of range or very close to the outer rims of your range with the torpedoes. You have to take into account that these torpedoes actually have to catch up with the ship. If it's sailing away from you and your torpedo is trying to catch it up, the quicker your torpedo is, of course, the bigger the chance it's actually going to get it. But at the same time, that ship is going to increase the range. So the chances that you're going to hit anything are very slim, to say the least. If there's a ship that is out of range but is sailing towards you, you have a bigger chance of hitting the target than when it's sailing away from you, even if it's still in range. The second and last thing I'm going to share about torpedoes is never, ever, ever fire torpedoes at enemy ships when there's friendly ships ahead of you. They might, as it is with enemy ships, you're firing at an enemy ship and you're hoping that it's going to continue in a straight line. But if you fire and there's friendly ships ahead of you, you're hoping that they don't change course as well, because they might run into your torpedoes. And that is something that the game doesn't take into account. You'll turn pink once you hit them with torpedoes, and you might actually team kill. And that's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for your team, and it's not going to be good for your chance to win the game. So make sure you never fire torpedoes when there's enemy ships ahead of you. Torpedoes aren't friendly. And friendly fire, well, there are no such things as friendly torpedo hits. It is all hostile. Whether it's fired by a friend or a foe, a torpedo will hit and will hurt a lot. So that was my thoughts about torpedoes. I'll leave you with some gameplay of some torpedo hits, and I'll see you later. Goodbye. You
した。軍の勝利は目前です。